What is going on, FA Nation? This is the NBA DFS daily live stream. I am your host, James Grande, joined by the great Sean Mitchell. Sean, it is so good to be back on this live stream. It is so good to have the NBA back. It's so good to be back in the trenches with you, brother. How you doing?
I'm great, man. Great. Super excited like a kid on Christmas. We get our first big slate of the year. 13 games after a two-gamer is basically like getting a PS5 for Christmas when you've been asking for it for a couple of years. It's going to be a fun one, man. Even if, with the Houston game being postponed, it's still going to be a good slate. 12 games. I'm here. I'm all here for it.
I was gonna say, I don't know if you heard, but Christmas is right on the corner, so it is basically like Kid on Christmas because it is basically Christmas. And if you haven't heard, that 13 game slate has now shrunk to 12 due to Houston just doing nothing proper, and they just ignored all protocols, whether it be a barbershop, a strip club, you name it. The Rockets
Just ruined fun for everyone.
Ruined the fun for everyone. So that game has been postponed. We are down to 12 games. Still a big, enticing slate. 9 of the 12 games currently over 220. Most of them over 225, and a lot of them have even risen over 230. So we have a lot of enticing Vegas totals, which are very important note. We had John and Pemba on the playbook and the new look fast break article that is replacing the example lineups. We've been talking about that all week, and we have debuted it today, so make sure we go check it out. But Sean, we are going to be digesting John's playbook, so you ready to dive in?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Starting at the point guard position, per usual, we will just be going, for anyone new here at the live stream, we will be just going position by position breakdown, usually just breaking down the playbook, and then if Sean and I have any, guys that we want to throw in there, we will right at the end. But let's start with the point guard at the top. I think we are all in agreement. He was the cover of our all of our season-long content, our NBA cheat sheet. Luka Doncic is in a smash spot the first night of the season, and he's priced accordingly, 11-4 on FanDuel, 10K on DraftKings. I don't think we need to spend much time on this, Sean. Best play, I would say we're in agreement, top play of the slate, right?
Yeah, I mean, easily. You got to think the highest total on the board here is in this game. You got to mention that, Kristaps Porzingis is out. Last year, whenever we had the same instance, you saw Luka in the 40s, for percentage of usage. It's an easy one.
Moving down the list, we have a lot of really elite point guards on the slate. I mean, we do have 12 games, so we have most of the NBA playing tonight. The next tier of guys in the playbook, and honestly, it's just the next tier of guys: Westbrook, Trae Young, Damian Lillard, Ben Simmons. I'll even throw John Morant in that mix too. Is there like a certain way you would lean? We've talked about this off air. I would personally lean Trae Young. I think you are on the Lillard fence here in terms of like the top guy at this next tier. Am I right with that assessment?
Yeah, you are. I'm big on Dame tonight. I just think that a lot of people are going to overlook him at the price. He's one of those GPP plays that we know can just totally smash. And looking at his last year against Utah, 42.3 points per game in 3 games is what he averaged. Right around a 35% usage rate, 39 minutes per game, 4 rebounds, and 8.7 assists. So huge numbers for Lillard there against Utah last year. He plays well at home. It's just a really good spot that I think is going to be overlooked. I think he could be a GPP winner tonight.
And those were actual points, ladies and gentlemen. Those weren't fantasy points per game.
Real points per game on average.
Real points.
It was an average of 3 games. That's not 1 game. That was 3 games.
Yeah, and for anyone wondering, how Mike Conley did play in 2 of those games, and CJ McCollum played in all 3. So it wasn't like there were people off the floor. Nobody was missing. Dame was just being Dame. I think that Trae is in a pretty good spot here against Chicago. That total has risen drastically. It's actually up to 233.5, which is actually now tied with Dallas and Phoenix, which has dropped to 233.5. So I do find that game to be really appealing. And we saw Trae playing a lot of minutes in the preseason, so I don't think there's going to be any sort of limitation. I think it's go, go, go for all Atlanta. I definitely think Simmons is a solid play, and I think John labeled it perfectly. I don't know if anyone has taken a look at the playbook, but there is a new feature, and it is game type, where we're breaking down whether someone is a cash play, a GPP play, or someone you can use in all formats. And I think Ben Simmons is perfect for cash games. I don't think he gives you that. I mean, he does give you a triple-double upside, but he generally lands in that 5x, 6x range, which is fine for cash games because that's what we're looking for. We're looking for that 5x floor. So I think Simmons is good. I do think Morant is an X factor, and I've been saying it since the offseason. I think there's something different about this dude, and there's no Jaren Jackson here in a good spot against the Spurs, who, let's face it, really
They're not very good. They're not very good.
Yeah, they really lost a lot last year defensively, and a lot of teams exploited them. So I think Morant could be a really interesting tournament play. And at 8,400, I think people will be scared off. So I think you could definitely go there. Let's drop down to the next tier, Sean, because I know you're itching to get to him. We have Chris Paul. I think both of us, and John included, loves DeJounte Murray. Obviously, I mean, he wrote more about DeJounte Murray than anyone else in this playbook. But then there's Malcolm Brogdon here at $6,200. John has him listed as a cash play. And we talked about it on the podcast last night. I don't love this game as much, I think, as John does, and I don't think I love it as much as you. I like Brogdon, the player. Sell me and sell FA Nation on why we're using Brogdon. And you're saying in more than just cash games.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's interesting in GPPs also. I mean, the price is cheap. Last year you were probably paying at least $7K for him, mostly any slate. The flip side, he's going against Elf Payton here, who we all know is not that great on the defensive side of the ball. 112.8 defensive rating all of last year. He ranked 6th worst on the team as a defender. And Brogdon he fills the sheet. He can do it all. He does the defensive stats really well. And he's an overall good scorer. He dishes the ball well. TJ Warren is playing, which I was kind of hoping I didn't think he would sit, but it wouldn't have hurt if he did. But I just really like the spot. I don't think a lot of people are going to play this game simply because it has a low total. They don't really know how the New York Knicks team is actually going to play. Not real sure. A lot of question marks still with this team. So I really like Indiana. I just think it's a good spot for Malcolm here, and I don't mind playing him in GPPs because I think he's going to come in with low ownership. I think people are just going to go right on down to like a Jeff Teague or something that is a whole lot cheaper on this slate, especially on DraftKings. So I think he's interesting. I really do. He was in the value vault also. I mean, he's one of my top plays for value on DraftKings. So.
I mean, this is a guy we're going to get at like 7K in peak season form, so I do agree. Let's move over to shooting guard, where we have a couple of really intriguing options. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in the playbook. We need to just mention he is no longer on the slate. Houston OKC has been canceled, but we're not going to take a player out of the playbook. We still want you guys to see the process that we were going through for every slate. So Shai Gilgeous-Alexander no longer on the slate. Do not put him or anyone on OKC or anyone in Houston on your lineups. They are currently going to another strip club as we speak. Let's move down. Here at the top, at the shooting guard position, we have guys like Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan. Who do you like between those two if we're kind of choosing one or the other?
I really agreed with you whenever you said that, the Hawks-Chicago game is kind of sneaky. I like LaVine. I mean, I just think that he's going to come in with being that veteran guy on this team. There's not a whole lot around him. They're bringing in, they got Pat Williams probably starting at the small forward spot. They got some new faces, young guys. I don't know. I just think that LaVine's probably going to be that same thing that he was last year, where he's the main scorer. He's going to be handling the ball a lot. Usage rate always up there in the 30s. I think I'm going to be having to go with him over DeRozan.
I agree, and I think we've seen last year we saw more scoring upside from LaVine, and we didn't really see that at the end of the year out of DeRozan. And I think the increase in DeJounte Murray's role is going to really impact DeRozan from a fantasy standpoint. Right. I don't know if this is crazy to say, Sean, but I think we could be getting, by like year's end, DeMar DeRozan and DeJounte Murray's price are flipped. Not like completely, but DeJounte is just as pricey as DeMar because he does more peripherally. We've seen it in the past. I mean, DeJounte Murray is one of the best rebounding guards in basketball when he's healthy. and playing a lot of minutes. And I think this is the year that we see that. And sorry, Demar.
I hate to say it, but a lot of last year, DeRozan's numbers were kind of pumped up because LMA wasn't there, and he didn't play a lot of games. Marcus Aldridge was not on the floor a lot. So DeMar DeRozan had to be that number one guy. I mean, he's got a lot more around him. Marcus is back now. Dejounte Murray's kind of going into a full role. LaVine has nobody, and I mean, they said it on ESPN the other day that he's, Billy Donovan is working with him on trying to cut more to the basket, trying to take it to the hole a lot, and he was showing that in the preseason. And I think he's gonna work on that a lot more this year. I think you're gonna see a lot more offensive-minded Zach LaVine here.
Yeah, and he can get to the rim at will with that athleticism. So he just needs. I know he just needs to not just settle for threes the entire night.
I was gonna say he needs to just let it fly, but I mean I don't mean he needs to just start chucking up shots.
Right. He needs to let it fly because he jumps higher than everyone else in the NBA.
Yeah, he can definitely let it fly in the air. That's for sure.
Let's move down to the value tier and I'll throw out a couple names and let me know what your thoughts are. I think we're all team Josh Richardson this year. I think this was the perfect fit for him in Dallas, especially while Kristaps Porzingis is out, because Tim Hardaway Jr. is a nice complementary piece, and he can be a good scorer at times, but he disappears a lot. If we get Miami version of Josh Richardson, I mean, he could be a really strong number 2 option for Dallas here in a really good matchup against Phoenix, and individually against the likes of Devin Booker, who we know is more offensive-minded than defensive-minded.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, Josh Richardson price is just fine at 5.3 on both sides. His defense is great. He actually is known for his defense more than his offense. But whenever he was in Miami, he was an offensive-minded guy. I mean, he played really good on both sides of the ball. I think, like you said, this is a perfect fit for him. Curry's out for Dallas now, so it's basically his role to have. Daylon Wright's not there anymore, so he's going to be the main guy. I mean, like I said, we saw THJ play tons of minutes last year, and we got to have the feeling that Richardson's going to do the same here. He's going to get lots of minutes. He's going to get the ball, especially with Kristaps out, like you mentioned. It's a perfect spot, and I really like his price tonight for both sides.
What are your thoughts on? Give me an exposure level to guys like Buddy Hield and Tyler Hero tonight on a 12-game slate. Buddy Hield in a tough spot against Denver.
Don't love Buddy Hield in Denver. Gary Harris probably going to be guarding him. Gary Harris is a pretty good defender.
Yeah, one of the best probably perimeter defenders in basketball.
He's probably one of the better ones, and that's what he's known for. So I don't exactly love Buddy Hield, especially on the road. Such a tough environment to play in, which I know we're in the bubble. It's Denver though. They really guard the guards well. It's just not a great matchup. I'd much rather pivot to like a Tyler Hero, especially at 5K and 55. I mean, that's crazy pricing for a guy that we saw just totally go off in the bubble and just totally come into his own. Totally took over for that Heat team. I think that Hero is one of probably the better value plays on the slate tonight.
Yeah, you got to think his role expands. We saw him start last year in spurts when there was injuries, and but you gotta think that Kendrick Nunn is going to lose a bunch of minutes to Tyler Hero, and even probably guys like Duncan Robinson, because Tyler Hero is he's an X factor, and we saw that in the playoffs last year. Yeah, let's shift over to small forward, Sean, where I think Giannis is, probably the second highest price option that we want to turn to behind Luka. It is a matchup against Boston, and we know Boston is generally known for their defense. But, everything about this matchup, Giannis has not had a problem with in the past. And, the game total here, 224, is really, really strong. Give me your thoughts on Giannis and how much exposure we should look to get here.
John put it best in the playbook. He averaged 30 points, 15 rebounds, 6 assists, and nearly 2 blocks a game against Boston last year. There's nobody that can guard him. Tatum is literally, probably other than like Marcus Smart, is Boston's best defender, and we already see that, it's not going to work. So, Daniel Tice likely starting at the center spot again. It's just a size differential that makes Giannis just such an easy play. There is worry that Boston might not be able to keep up with Milwaukee, and I totally see that aspect. So I might lower my exposure on Giannis a little bit because I think there are some other, plays that I want to get in that I don't think will have as much ownership because I think we're probably still, even on a 12-game slate, I would say that we probably see a 25 to 30% usage rate or a ownership percentage on Giannis still. People love playing Giannis. His price is really affordable on DraftKings for sure at 10-2. I mean, it's, you're basically looking at, like you said, like him and Luka. But like I said, I think he's going to have a little bit more ownership than I want. And if this game does happen to turn into a blowout, we did see Giannis play less than 30 minutes a lot last year. We've seen it happen a lot. And, not that he needs a full allotment of minutes most of the time to score 60 plus, but if you're paying if he's one of your top spin ups, you want that upside. You want that 70, 80 point upside. And, if they do happen to get a little bit of a lead, who knows? So just saying, I probably won't have as much ownership as I probably would think most probably will, but that's just probably me, and I play only GPP. So
I think there was two main points there. And one, I love the point that you bring about the minutes because that is a factor. Budenholzer literally limited him all season long until they got to the bubble. And then that's when we saw Giannis playing 35-plus minutes a night.
Right.
So I think that's a very interesting point. I will counter and say in Boston, only a 4-point spread. So I think there is – right. And I think maybe home away won't matter as much this year because there are no crowd.
Right.
At least for now, while there's still no crowds. But it is only a 4-point spread in Boston, so I do think Boston does have the legs to stay in this. Let's move down the position where there are a couple mid-tier guys that I find interesting making it John's playbook. And I find it interesting because we do have our draft forecast percentages out now. Brandon Ingram, Gordon Hayward, Danilo Gallinari, all slotting in under 5% ownership. And I think that's significant because, one, we know what Brandon Ingram can bring to the table in this New Orleans offense. Plus, we saw it from the get-go with Stan Van Gundy. They played 30 minutes a game in preseason. They played 30 minutes the first game of preseason, if that's any indication on how many minutes these guys are going to play. Gordon Hayward is no restriction, but he's being monitored. The ever so tossed around monitored word, because if he looks great, there's going to be nothing to monitor. And then Danilo Gallinari, who with Clint Capella out, probably slides into a starting position against Lauri Markkanen. So it's very interesting to me that all three of these guys are projected at such low ownership. What say you, Sean?
I really like Brandon Ingram. I think a lot of people are going to shy away from this matchup with Toronto, but the thing is he was pretty dang good against them last year. 2 games, averaged 33 minutes a game, 31% usage rate. He averaged 24.5 points per game, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, basically almost a block per game as well. Really good numbers against them last year. A lot of people, when they think of Toronto, they think about that hard-nosed defense. They really weren't. They weren't. Don't get me wrong. They're a good team. They're a really good defensive team, but they can be exploited in some instances. And Brandon Ingram is just that kind of guy. He's going to be the main go-to for the Pelicans this year. I know everybody's all high on Zion, but everybody forgets that Ingram was the guy before Zion got there. He's going to still be that guy. And the numbers are great. 5% or less ownership on him. Love that. Hayward, I'm not too keen on. I think
agreed.
I think I might play that off just to see kind of how he fits in that role now. It is a new team. It's a whole new face. It's a whole new environment. I mean, it's just a lot of question marks with Hayward. I really do like Gallinari, and I think that he can have a good role, and especially if he does slot into the 4 with Collins moving over to the 5 without Capella. I think he is a very interesting play because we both know that bigs generally last year ate up Chicago pretty good. So very well, don't you, Grande?
We got to talk about our team like that, Sean. Just what every year, there's a little more hope, and then you just poo-poo it right before the season even begins. But I do agree, it's going to be a tough year defensively for Chicago. I do think Gallo profiles well as a cash game play, one you can leverage in your cash games, because if he's going to be that low owned, I mean, hey, you get 35 fantasy points from Gallo at 5K on DraftKings, and you're in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
I think just a couple more names we can throw out here at small forward without giving everything away. What's your stance on a chalk Larry Nance? Because I think that a lot of people are going to go here knowing Kevin Love's out, but I mean, I think Andre Drummond is going to grab every rebound imaginable. And if Larry Nance isn't stuffing the box score, we know he's not a score first guy. What is his real value even in a starting role?
You know, I'll be the first one to tell you that I'm not going to play Larry Nance tonight because I had way too many instances last season where he was uber chalk and he did absolutely nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing. And I'm just not going to go through that again this year, Grande. I'm just not going to do it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play Jeremy Grant instead at 4.7 on DraftKings. That's what I'm going to do.
I mean, I'm also going to do that. So I can't really say anything there because I too will be playing. And it's something that we've talked about, and we talked about it, in our chat. Minnesota is very exploitable defensively. They played a very fast pace, which when we're talking about pace in NBA, we want to attack the teams playing up in pace. So Detroit, who were one of the slower paced teams in the NBA, are getting a massive pace upgrade here, which means they're going to get more possessions offensively, which is obviously beneficial to everyone. So just a quick little pace tutorial, on our first live stream. And that's kind of why we do like Jeremy Grant and some of these Pistons.
Minnesota, third fastest team last year. Gotta like it, really.
Yep, and they really didn't change personnel, so it's not like they're going to just run some more. Let's shift over to power forward, Sean. We have some elite talent at the top, and I think John Collins and Zion really speak to me the most here. I think Bam is solid. But I don't think Orlando Miami is really piquing my fancy yet. It's one of those games where exactly 12 games.
Miami Orlando.
Yeah, man, 12 games. Like you look for those games you don't really want to play, and then you kind of shrink the slate. And I think the Pelicans Toronto is a game we could play, and I definitely think Atlanta Chicago are 2 games we could play. Collins is going to start against the foul happy Wendell Carter, and Zion just looked like an absolute freak of nature in the preseason. I think you can't go wrong playing either one of those 2 guys.
No, I really like John Collins. I mean, I wasn't high on him coming into the season, but now that Clint Capella, dealing with a little bit of injuries, we kind of saw what he could do last year. He really took over last year whenever he was playing that 5 spot. So really like that spot for him. Again, we kind of mentioned with Gallinari, the same story here. The 5s really do big damage against Chicago, so really like Collins. Zion, I'm all right with. I think he'll have more ownership because of the fan perspective. Public perception is going to play a big thing tonight. People are going to play the biggest names. Zion Williamson is going to be on that list, and I don't want any part of that because I'm playing GPPs. With Christian Wood being labeled off the slate now from the postponement, I think that really shrinks the power forward spot. It's really thin. There's really not a whole lot of just major star talent. So I think Collins is pretty much a runaway in my eyes. I think it's Collins number 1 there in the power forward spot.
Yeah, I do too. And I will say Jeremy Grant on DK is power forward eligible at just 4.7. So I think him, Gallinari, who's only a power forward on DK, I think is a play. So I think that's
a multi-eligible position. You're probably going to be able to get a lot of other guys in that power forward spot.
Well, I'll throw one more name out there for you here in John's playbook, and I want to see if you bite. Bojan. How about Bojan making his return? It is not the easiest matchup because he'll probably see Bob Cove on defense, and Bob Cove is a very good defender for what Bob Cove is. But, I mean, Bojan was the guy in Utah a lot of the time, and that's with Donovan Mitchell on the floor. I mean, we saw Bojan averaging 20 points a game for most of the year.
Was Conley there whenever Bojan was playing?
They played a lot of games together. I mean, Conley played a good chunk of the season. I'll look up exactly how many games he played.
I didn't think they played that many.
Conley played 52 games last year. So, I mean, him and Bojan definitely played together. Because if he played 52 games, Bojan played 63. So they definitely played a lot of minutes together.
I like Bojan. I really do. He was one of the first guys that I saw as far as the price list goes when I first started looking at this slate. I was like, wow, that's pretty silly, It does suck that it's not, Carmelo defense that we love to face and fade. But, Rubko is a good defender, but I don't think we'll see, this day and age with the NBA, it's, even Kelly Oubre said it's positionless basketball a lot of the times now. So whenever you're looking at the DVP, it's fun. It's great to look at and analyze and add into the factor into your research. But at the same time, it's almost worth its weight in gold. So it's like, kind of how do you want to approach that? I honestly think that the Utah and Portland game is highly stackable. Like I said, Dame Lillard's one of my favorite plays on the slate, if not my favorite play. So I do want to have some exposure to that game, and I think Bouillon's definitely one that I'm going to have some exposure to.
I like it. I mean, I'm with you. I think Boyan's price stood out to me right like a sore thumb right off the bat, especially on DraftKings. Let's wrap this up at center, Sean. Yep. It's an elite position, right? I mean, we've looked at the names all day. We've seen Towns. We've seen Embiid. We've seen Drummond at the top. How do you lean if you were to rank those three guys? We'll just take Towns, Embiid, Drummond. I don't think we're on the Jokic train, at least today. I don't think we need to go there. I think there are
John might be, but I don't think we will.
Yeah. John is definitely the number one Nikola Jokic fan. We will be seeing John on a lot of live streams with his Jokic jersey on. But if without Jokic, Towns, Embiid, Drummond, just rank them in terms of in GPP. Since you are the GPP god. If you were to rank them for GPP exposure, how would you go?
I think that we see a lower percentage on Joel Embiid tonight, and I think I really like that. Excuse me. I think Towns is probably going to garner the most ownership easily because, we haven't seen a lot of Towns lately. He didn't play a whole lot last year, and he's got a great matchup. At worst, he's going to be facing, Plumlee at center for Detroit.
And Jahlil Okafor. Oh, my God.
Blake, the matchup's great for Karl-Anthony Towns, and I totally understand it. But I like Embiid. Last year in this same spot against Washington, played 3 games, had a 32.6% usage rate on average over those 3 games, 32.5 minutes, 25.3 points per game, 15 rebounds per game, 2.3 assists, and pretty much a steal and a block per game. So the numbers are there for Embiid. I think we get him at a lower ownership than, even Drummond. Drummond's probably going to have a very, very high ownership with, the position that he's in, especially with Kevin Love out. But I think those are easily the top 3 plays at the center spot. But for me, being a GPP player, I got my eyes on Joel Embiid tonight.
Let's talk about GPPs because we got a couple guys down here at the bottom of the barrel here at center, and I think they're intriguing. We have Hassan Whiteside, and if we want to just talk DraftKings specific, because it's really the price points really stand out on DraftKings. Whiteside is 3,800. We have Wendell Carter at 4,400, and then we have power forward center eligible PJ Washington, who has already been announced the starter at power forward tonight for Charlotte at 4,200. I think a lot of ownership goes these 3 guys' way if you're not spending up. Do you have a preference on the 3? I am worried about Whiteside. We've kind of expressed our worry about Buddy Hield going to Denver. I don't think that bodes well for a big guy either going to Denver, especially when they have to deal with Jokic on the offensive end all night. Wendell Carter could have 2 fouls before the end of this live stream, and it wouldn't shock either of us. And then PJ Washington is a wild card because he can shoot threes. How much center is he going to play? How much center is he going to be playing against Andre Drummond? What's your lean between those 3 guys?
I don't see how you don't like Hassan at that price. I know Rashawn's going to likely be the starter. That's fine. But for the price at 3.8, we saw him do plenty enough in 20 minutes last year with Portland to suffice at 3.8 price point. Excuse me. I think Whiteside's going to be the one that I have to go with. PJ Washington, we didn't really see a whole lot from him last year. Plus now we're getting Hayward thrown into the mix there.
Right.
I'm not sure. I just don't know how to feel about that one. Wendell Carter kind of in the same position. The guy can put up points, but and he's going to have a chance to, with Collins going to the 5 probably. It's a decent matchup, but I don't exactly love it because Collins is actually a pretty decent defender. So I think you just got to plug Whiteside there at 3.8. I mean, if you need the relief, he's your guy. I mean, he can do so much more in a small amount of time than I think that either Wendell Carter or PJ Washington can do in 30 minutes. I mean, I think it's pretty much even, and I think he's just way cheaper. I mean, not way cheaper, but you get a little bit more of a discount with him there.
I think it's a good breakdown of all three. I'd probably lean Carter, but I mean, I'm sitting on pins and needles because I know, again, he could be in fouls instantly, and then I'm dead. I just want to get your take. 2 lineup notes before we get out of here. It is 6:31. The Grizzlies are starting Ja Morant, Grayson Allen, Dillon Brooks, Kyle Anderson at the 4, and Jonas Valanciunas. Any interest in Grayson Allen or Dillon Brooks here, or even Kyle Anderson going up against San Antonio?
I will not be playing slow-mo. I will not be playing slow-mo. I will not play. No.
He has a negative usage rate generally, so I'm with you.
Grayson Allen's very intriguing on DK because he's basically free. We saw him come on really strong last year towards the end of the season whenever he was getting lots of run. Got a year in the books now, and he, like I said, was getting really good minutes last year. So I think he's very intriguing. He's going to shoot a lot of threes. He shot the ball really well from the 3-point line last year, and he had a couple really good games. I mean, I think he's definitely a GPP dart for sure. And
then the Miami Heat are starting Jimmy Butler at point guard tonight, alongside Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, Mo Harkless, and Bam Adebayo. So that Tyler Hero interest kind of just on the rise now that he's in the starting lineup. I think you could probably insert Tyler Hero into any format you want at 5,500 in the starting lineup. Sean, one more question before we get out of here. If you were stacking one game tonight, and I know you kind of already gave us a sneak peek of the game you'd choose, I think, what game would you go with?
Right now, it's a toss-up between Portland, Utah, and Minnesota and Detroit. I like both of them. I think they're both sneaky. I think Utah and Portland's probably the more sneakier of the two because I don't think a lot of people will be getting a lot of players in that game. So I really like it because I think a lot more people probably will gravitate to the Minnesota-Detroit game. A lot of defense, fast pace. So I'll probably be throwing in a few stacks for the Portland and Utah game.
I'm with you. I like both those games. Brother, it's been a great time. Shout out to John and Pemba for just doing everything today. Writing the playbook, doing the fast break, producing the live stream. But we'll be back here Friday, I believe, with no games tomorrow. Oh no, Christmas. So we won't have a live stream, but we will have a full day of content outside of the live stream on Christmas. And we'll be back next Monday with the live stream.